Dried mud crusted on my skirt like cracks in a drought-stricken land. My shoes must have fallen somewhere, probably when I fell for the third time. I didn't look back to find them. My side ached sharply, my legs were utterly exhausted, and the road was so quiet it felt like no one had ever been there. They left me on the edge of the highway under the blazing sun and the endless rush of passing cars. No explanation, no glance back. I stood there neither crying nor complaining, just watching the car disappear along with the pieces of memory they had just discarded. 3 days later, the house at the foot of the hill was no longer mine. I didn't tell anyone, and I didn't need them to know. And then when they came back, everything had changed, but not in the way they expected. I used to think that house was the safest place in the world. Small old nothing fancy. But every brick, every creak of the wooden floor was a trace of the years I raised my child alone after my husband passed. I worked as a nurse for over 30 years. Day shifts, night shifts, the smell of disinfectant clinging to me. Sometimes coming home late, my back aching like it was breaking, I'd still make a glass of milk for my child before bedtime. I used to joke I don't have good insurance, only a child who makes me want to live 20 more years. Fonzie was everything to me. When she was 8 and broke her leg on a camping trip, I sold my last wedding ring to pay the hospital bills. Then Fonzie grew up and got married. I met Armando for the first time on Thanksgiving evening. He was smooth-talking, the kind you see in real estate, but his eyes never quite met mine. When Fonzie said she wanted to move in with him to save up for a house, I hesitated. Not because I didn't love her, but because I was used to living alone. Quiet, neat, doing whatever I wanted without asking anyone. But then I thought the house had extra rooms, so why not? At first it was fine. Armando was polite, Fonzie helped me cook. But then, one day, Armando put a stack of papers on the table and smiled. "Mom, I'm thinking we should all have our names on the house deed. It'll make bank paperwork easier later, and you won't have to worry." I stayed silent. "I'm not stupid," I just said. "This house is the result of my and my husband's hard work. I'm not transferring the deed to anyone." He forced a smile. From then on, everything changed. I began to feel like a guest in my own home. I had to ask permission before using the kitchen because the new countertop just got installed. It needs to stay clean. One day, while I was cleaning in the kitchen, I overheard Fonzie whisper, "Mom took the wrong pot again, the one I set aside for the party." I heard it, but said nothing. Family meetings about money having children investments happened in the living room. I sat in the kitchen. No one asked me a single question. My bedroom where my wedding photo and Fonzie's graduation pictures hung was emptied to store wedding gifts. They said, "Mom, please use the back room for a few weeks. We need space to get the party ready." I didn't react, not out of fear, but because I was quietly collecting every small sign of their changing feelings. I knew something was slipping away from me, but I kept telling myself maybe I was just too sensitive. I was wrong, and I never imagined. I only had a few months left to prepare for the most painful fall a mother could face. I found out through Facebook, not from my daughter's mouth, not at the dinner table where we had shared so many meals, but from a photo posted by my granddaughter, a 13-year-old girl who didn't know that her grandmother had never even heard of a second proposal. The picture was taken at an upscale restaurant, soft golden lights, sparkling wine glasses. Armando was kneeling on one knee holding up a diamond ring. Fonzie covered her mouth, pretending to be surprised. Below the caption read, "She said, yes." Again, I read that line over and over. A proposal again. What for? They've been married for years. I went downstairs trying to keep calm. Fonzie was cutting fruit in the kitchen, her hands moving as skillfully as always. I stood there for a few seconds and then asked softly as a breeze, "Do you have something you want to tell me?" Fonzie looked up, hesitated for a moment, then looked down again. "Ah, that. It's just that Armando wanted to do something romantic again. You're old, and the party will be crowded. Too noisy, not good for your health." I didn't respond. I just watched her. Then I went back upstairs and closed the door. I took out the old tin box, the one where I kept the letters Fonzie wrote when she was little. "Mom, you're my superhero." "Mom, come home early tomorrow to take me to watch the fireworks." Okay, the letters were still there, but that little girl wasn't. 3 days later, I found a cream-colored envelope on the kitchen table, printed with the logo of an event company. I opened it. An invitation card addressed to Ms. Clara Evans, my former housekeeper, a kind woman who used to clean the house every Saturday until she retired a year ago. My name wasn't on it. I went straight to ask Fonzie, "What's this?" Fonzie looked surprised to see me holding the envelope. Then that forced smile again, the smile I was beginning to hate, not because it was fake, but because it confirmed I was being pushed out of the picture. "They must have sent it by mistake. You can come if you want." "We're a family, right? Family." I repeated the word like testing if it still meant anything. At that moment, I wasn't angry, not yet sad. I just felt distant, like living in a house I once belonged to, but now just a tenant without a lease, forgotten from the guest list. And just like everything lately, I started to disappear in very small ways. Like that slip that day. A little water spilled on the kitchen floor, and the afternoon light through the window blinded me. I didn't fall hard, but my right hand hit the hard floor, and my wrist immediately swelled and bruised. I leaned on the fridge to stand up. No screams, no calls for help, simply because I didn't want anyone to see me weak. But Fonzie heard the noise. She ran and panicked, calling Armando as if I'd just lost an artery. Less than an hour later, Armando came back with a stack of papers. He said he had called a premium rehabilitation center, a place with full amenities, doctors monitoring 24/7 soft beds, good food, and private rooms. I glanced through the file without saying a word. On the cover in bold letters, it read, "Long-Term Care Program for Seniors Golden Care Package." He said, "You need to rest for a few weeks. They take care of everything there. Here, you see the floors are slippery, the stairs are dangerous." I looked down at my hand. The bruise had darkened, but it didn't hurt as much as the ache in my chest. He didn't ask if I wanted to go, didn't ask if I was okay. They had already decided, and I was just something to be handled quietly. That night, I lay still in bed, the lights off. My back hurt, my hand ached, and my heart felt heavy as stone. I heard noises downstairs, the clatter of dishes, soft music from the Bluetooth speaker, Armando talking on the phone with an excited tone. I reached for my old notebook, the kind with a built-in mini recorder that I used as a nurse to record quick meetings. I slipped it into my sweater pocket and went downstairs. No one noticed. I passed the kitchen and stopped behind the wall, just a meter away from them, but enough for them to think I couldn't hear. Armando was saying, "Once we get her in there, I'm free. And if your mom agrees to sign over the house, we can use that money as a deposit for the wedding villa in Italy." I heard Fonzie's soft laugh, then a voice I'd never heard from her before. "If Mom signs, I can cover the long-term care fees, too. She'll be taken care of properly, and I'll have peace of mind." I felt my heart clench tightly. My whole life, I tried so hard for her to feel secure, to have everything. Selling my wedding ring, working night shifts, enduring a sore back, and endless coughing from hospital disinfectants. And now, she's at peace by pushing me away. I quietly went back to my room, my hands trembling as I took off my sweater and pulled out the recorder. I sat in front of the dresser and opened each drawer. I took down their wedding photo, something I'd framed with my own hands. A picture of 3 generations, me, Fonzie, and my granddaughter at Disneyland when she was 6. I removed the nails and put them into a cardboard box. I took everything down, every framed photo, every letter hanging on the wall, gently without making a sound. I needed empty space, not to rest, but to prepare. Fonzie hugged me before getting in the car and said, "Mom, you need to relax. Let's just put all the stressful stuff behind us for a few weeks. Come with me, okay?" Armando smiled too, saying he'd already booked a room at a resort in the forest. No cell signal, no social media, just nature and family. I didn't bring my phone. They said the signal was weak, easy to lose, so it was better to leave it at home. I only took my wallet, some cash, and a thin jacket. The car drove for 3 hours through mountains and winding little roads. I couldn't remember the location. I didn't ask either because part of me wanted to believe that my child was still the one who once held my hand tightly at the market and said, "Don't go far, Mom. I'm afraid of getting lost." When the car stopped at a rest stop along the highway, Armando told me, "Mom, go outside and get some fresh air. It's beautiful here." Those bushes behind you overlook the valley. Fonzie and I will get coffee. Just 5 minutes. I stepped out. The afternoon sun was pale gold, the breeze light. I walked along a path and saw some thick bushes. It really was beautiful. I turned back after a few minutes, but the car was gone. Only an empty, silent parking lot remained, and the wind blew colder in a strange way. I waited. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, then half an hour. I started walking around, calling their names even though I knew no one would answer. No one passed by, no car horns. I found a trail leading deeper into the forest. In my mind, I thought maybe they parked somewhere else. Maybe I'm in the wrong spot. I walked further in, called louder. Then I got lost. Dusk began to fall. The ground was soft, muddy. Mosquitoes buzzed around my ears. I got scratched by thorny bushes, and once I fell, hitting my hip on a rock. No car lights, no sign of hope. Only the harsh truth slowly revealed itself. They never planned to come back. I was left behind. Not because they forgot, but because they wanted it that way. When I woke up, I was lying in a hospital bed. My eyes opened to a stark white ceiling, the familiar smell of antiseptic lingering in my nose. The nurse told me I had been brought in by a young couple. They found me trembling by the edge of the forest, dehydrated with a bruise on my side. The doctor asked if I remembered my name. I answered clearly. I even remembered my house number. Then the nurse handed me a copy of the missing person report my daughter had filed that very morning. I read it and froze. They wrote that I was confused, had a history of getting lost. They even described me as a small woman, short gray hair, wearing a blue shirt. But I was wearing a brown shirt that day. My hair was long, tied up high, not cut short at all. I looked at the description like it was an indictment against myself. Wrong information, wrong details, and it wasn't me. And like a perfect piece fitting into a horrifying puzzle, they wanted me to disappear. Not to be found, but to make it easier to take what I still held, my house. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the hospital ceiling and took a deep breath. That was the last time I let anyone think I was weak. The last time I confused love with dependence. The last time I believed that being a mother meant forgiving everything. I came back early one morning. No one knew, no warning, no welcome. The house door was still locked with the same lock I had changed 10 years ago before Fonzie moved back in. Luckily, they hadn't thought to change it. The house was still in my name. I stepped inside carefully, making no noise. The kitchen was cold, the living room cluttered with gift boxes, Italian travel catalogs, and a sketch of the dream house they planned to put a deposit on. I didn't clean up, I didn't cry. I just stood in the middle of the floor, my hand resting on the cold wooden surface of the old dining table, the very place I once taught Fonzie her first math lesson. Then I went upstairs, took the original property deed, locked it in my bag, and walked out of the house as if it had never been mine. The next morning, I went to the lawyer's office. The lawyer I chose was Mrs. Lynn Carter, a woman who had worked with me at the hospital and now ran a small but reputable law firm. I told her everything, not a single detail left out. She listened quietly, then asked only one question. "Are you ready to see this through to the end?" I nodded. Lynn started investigating the legal status of the house. Immediately, she found a property transfer application pending final approval. Among the documents was a power of attorney contract with a signature exactly like mine. Too perfect. To the point of suspicion. I hadn't signed anything in the past 3 months. Lynn suspected someone had scanned or photocopied my signature from old documents and used it to forge the paperwork. We needed proof, and I knew exactly who could help. I went to the couple who had helped me at the gas station, Julia and Craig. Craig was a former police officer and now worked as an independent investigation consultant for an insurance company. When I asked if he could help me gather some data, gas station cameras, rest stop information, Craig didn't hesitate for a second. "You're the first person to call me son after I saved you." He smiled. Within a week, Craig collected 3 valuable pieces of evidence. A video from the gas station camera showing me stepping out of the car empty-handed, and Fonzie right after turning to Armando and saying, "Just go quickly, she doesn't know anything." A voicemail recording, Craig retrieved from a call Fonzie accidentally left on a friend's answering machine, where Fonzie's voice was crystal clear. She's old now, so taking the house makes sense. I'm not going to take care of her until she forgets who I am. And forged contract evidence verified by Lynn's office through ink analysis, cross-checking document serial numbers, and comparing my recent tax signature sample, which was completely different from the forged one. I sat in the lawyer's office looking at all those documents printed out and neatly arranged on the table. Not for revenge, but to reclaim the truth. I am not property. I am a human being, a mother, someone who has paid a lifetime's price for that house, and no one has the right to turn me into a commodity. The very next morning, I filed a lawsuit against Armando and Fonzie for forgery, abuse of assets, and intentional emotional harm to an elderly person. And quietly, I did one more thing. I signed a contract to sell the house. No announcements, no messages left behind. After withdrawing all the transfer documents and restoring the legal status of the house back to my name, I met with a real estate agent, a former acquaintance from my days working at the city council. Sell it fast. The price doesn't need to be the highest. I just want it to no longer be the place where I was thrown out like a trash bag, I said. 3 days later, the house was listed. The buyer was a middle-aged woman looking for a home for her widowed mother. Ironically, she asked, "Do you know who used to live here? I want to keep some of the old spirit." I just smiled. No one is important. At that moment, I didn't know how they would react. And I didn't need to. I only knew one thing. For the first time in years, I slept well, in a strange room, knowing I was no longer held back by twisted family ties or photos on the wall meant to fool myself into thinking I was loved. They came back on Sunday afternoon, late enough so no neighbors would notice, early enough to still believe everything was under control. But the gate had been rekeyed. On the front door, a neat white envelope was taped. I imagined that moment, Armando trying the door handle twice, then banging hard on the door, while Fonzie bent down to open the letter, hands trembling. She definitely recognized Lawyer Lynn's signature. And she definitely read the first line to the last at least 3 times. "We hereby notify you that the house at 14 Red Willow Lane has completed the transfer to a third party. According to state law, you have 48 hours to vacate the premises." I was not there. I didn't need to witness it. 3 days later, they requested to meet me at the lawyer's office. Lynn asked if I wanted to postpone. I said no. I wore a light gray cardigan, the kind I used to wear when I was head nurse, and tied my hair neatly. I didn't need to appear strong. I just needed to be myself again. They were sitting there when I walked in, Armando in a wrinkled suit, Fonzie with red-rimmed eyes, but no sign of remorse. I sat down, opened the file, but didn't look at it. I just looked at them. No one spoke first. Finally, Armando gritted his teeth. "Do you think you can just destroy everything like this and act like nothing happened?" Lynn raised an eyebrow. "Destroy everything." "What exactly, sir?" "The house is still under my client's name. You and your wife only reside there temporarily. You have no ownership rights." He slammed the table. The papers shook. "You have no right to do this." I still didn't look at him. I turned to Fonzie. She was crying, tears streaming down silent but without weight. I looked at my daughter for a long time, then I asked in the exact tone I used to teach her right from wrong when she was 3. "Of all the things you learned from me." "Why did you choose the worst one?" Fonzie covered her face. Her shoulders shook, but I knew clearly some tears don't come from remorse, but from the fear of losing control. I said no more. I didn't need to, because perhaps the silence was something they never expected to receive from a mother they once treated like something to be dealt with. 2 days later, they left the house. I didn't ask where they went. I only knew the real estate agent handed the keys to the new owner, a calm, middle-aged woman with eyes carrying the weight of loss, ready to start anew. I never returned to that house. I didn't need to. The most beautiful memories of that home had long disappeared along with the trust I once placed fully in my daughter. I moved to live somewhere else, a place where no one saw me as a burden, where no one pretended to be kind just to get a signature, and where I didn't have to give up my seat at the table. Julia and Craig, the couple who had helped me out of the forest that day, invited me to live with them until I felt the world was a little less cold. They were expecting a child. Craig placed his hand on his wife's belly and said to me, "She needs a grandmother, and I can't think of anyone more deserving than you." I sat there, the late afternoon sunlight streaming through the window, casting light on my wrinkled hands. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel abandoned, not because I had become stronger, but because I stopped hoping from those who had long ceased to value me. I once thought being a mother meant giving everything without expecting anything in return, but it turns out love also needs limits. And forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting who you are. That afternoon, I went home, a small apartment outside the city, with a balcony growing lavender and a rocking chair Craig had installed for me. I made tea, turned on some soft jazz music, then opened the drawer of my bedside table. Inside was an old photo frame, a picture of the three of us taken the summer Fonzie was 12. My hair was still black, then my eyes still bright. I still had hope. I took a small piece of paper and wrote a few lines. No recipient address, no signature. If one day you come back looking for me, read these lines. I have not lost my daughter. I only let you choose how to lose me. And I am no longer angry, because I have learned to live on without bowing my head. I folded the paper gently, placed it behind the photo, then put the frame back in the drawer. Hidden with no expectation anyone would read it, I just needed to know I had spoken what needed to be said, and this time spoken it to myself. Forgiveness is not to show others you are kind, but to live on, lighthearted, without resentment. What about you, if you were in my shoes? Would you forgive, or would you walk away like I did to find yourself again? Please share your thoughts in the comments. I'm listening.